Welcome to Kettlebell Corner, where strength meets theory, where we join you for a deeper dive into all things kettlebell. I'm Jeremiah Waylon, and he's Roger Parks. And in this episode, we're going to share one rule that can instantly improve your kettlebell training. Keep the bell over your foot. Sounds simple, maybe even boring. But this one is principle backed by physics. That's right, you know us. It's the difference between lifting safely and efficiently or fighting against torque and unnecessary strain. We'll break down why the line of gravity matters, how small shifts multiply force, and why keeping that bell stacked over your base of support will make every lift stronger. Let's get into it. Roger, what's up, man?
I think we're going to talk about kettlebells.
Yeah, we always talk about kettlebells, but
Okay.
today we're going to talk about keeping the bell over your foot. And I don't mean like setting it on your shoe or anything like that, but we'll tell them what's up.
We will.
It's pretty simple. What kind of lifts does this apply to, and why the hell does this even matter?
First of all, the list that applies to kettlebell lifts, it's going to be anything you're going to do when you're standing. So both grinds, ballistics, it will impact both of them. The obvious exception to this will be the get up, which, there will be times when this will apply, sometimes when it won't. So just think anytime you're standing on your feet, this rule will be helpful. Anytime you're moving something against gravity. So this may not apply if you're working with bands or cables because the line of force is going in a different direction. But if you're standing, you're balanced, this rule will make a difference for you.
Yeah, plus it's with kettlebells. So if you're using cables and you're trying to find out information on that, you're in the wrong podcast, pal.
Probably.
Let's talk about, why this matters. We said that it's going to be safer and allow you to be more efficient. In what way? And maybe you want to talk about that log, aka line of gravity.
Well, we'll get into the line of gravity. I am reluctant to talk about safer because safer, sometimes yes, sometimes no. The fitness and movement is highly contextual. So sometimes it may matter, sometimes it may not. So as it gets into safety, I'm reluctant to use that word, but I do think that if you're looking at it purely from the sense of there is a certain amount of strain, okay, there mechanical tension that your muscles, your connective tissue can handle, and if you exceed that, that could cause injury, and injuries are unsafe, then that's where we're gonna go with. So if you're looking to maximize the amount that you can lift while minimizing the strain on your body, then this is going to be an effective rule. And there may be times when you don't want to follow this rule. For example, you have a bell that's a little lighter, a little smaller than you would normally want to use. Maybe you want to make your lifts less efficient. So I'm less worried about that and more interested in these are rules that you can use to make your lifts more efficient, meaning you can lift more weight with the same force. And if you are concerned with injury, this is something that can help minimize that risk, assuming that mechanical tension and strain is an injury mechanism. And as far as I know, it is.
Yeah, and we did cover how this applies specifically for something like the snatch and a way to make it so that your bell's over your foot there in the last episode. And then we have an episode about your pressing problems where we also cover specificity to the press. So be sure to check those out and note that this episode will give you a big, broader view of that, right?
Yeah, this is really a more direct treatment of this issue. This is something that we work on all the time as coaches. If we're working with new people, if we're breaking down form, we look to some of these, we look to the lift, and we use some of these lenses to say, hey, is this a good lift? Is this a bad lift? Usually people are coming in and they're saying something's wrong. This doesn't feel good, or I'm trying to get a heavier press. So we can just look at this very simple thing. Is the bell over the foot? We'll understand a good deal about balance and the idea of heavy. So let's use the scare quotes with heavy, because heavy is objective, but it's also subjective. And we're going to talk about why. So yeah, that's
very duality, science and not science.
Well, we'll talk about exactly what he means.
All right. Well, let's talk about that underlying principle of the line of gravity real quick. So you like to set this up. So they got to understand where the line of gravity is. Let's see if I can recall a little bit. It's essentially the line that runs straight down through the center of the mass, through the bell, within. That's it, right? Does it involve the base support at all at this point?
Generically at this point, no. Generically, the line of gravity is where gravity falls vertically through the center of mass of an object, in this case, a system of objects. So he's talking about the lifter and the bell because they're behaving as one thing. So we would call it a system. So wherever gravity is falling vertically through that system is the line of gravity. We've mentioned this before, that the center of mass of an object is really a single point that's representative of the entire object. So the center of mass of a kettlebell actually represents the entire kettlebell from a physics standpoint. You're looking at just one little dot that can influence the whole thing. If I have, let's say, a kettlebell on the floor and it's on a towel or a slider or something, let's say I push the handle, that bell will move, but it's not going to move straight away. It's gonna maybe want to tip off of the base a little bit. If I push to the right or the left of the center of mass of the bell, it's going to want to rotate away from me. However, if I can find the center of mass of the bell and I push that point, the whole bell is going to move. So when I say the center of mass is a point that represents the whole object, that's what I mean. It's an important point. And if you're looking at how all these other lines and forces interact with something, that's going to be a very important point. So the line of gravity always falls through that point. And there's some other interesting things about that point. Now you just referenced the base of support. So what's the base of support?
No, that's where you're balanced, right? It's a circular area around your center of mass.
So yes, that's true. The base of support is the thing that's supporting the object in the system. So in the case of a lifter who's standing, your base of support will be your 2 feet. If you're standing next to a wall, you put your hand on the wall is a part of your base of support. If you're bench pressing, the bench is part of your base of support. So your base of support is whatever's holding you up, whatever is helping you balance the structure. And balance, as you referenced, is easily defined as maintaining the center of mass, so that point that's at the middle of the mass, either of an individual object or group of objects, in this case a group, keeping the center of mass over the base of support. So if your center of mass is over the base of support, you're balanced. And the closer to the center of your base of support, the more balanced you are. So as you move the center of mass toward, let's say, Jeremiah referenced a circle around your feet. That's what we like to visualize. This circle is a platform from which we can launch a lift. So if we're standing up. Don't worry about any kettlebells in your hand right now. And you look down, imagine a circle around your feet. That is going to be your base of support. The center of mass of you, okay, which is going to be anatomically somewhere between your belly button and your pubic bone. The closer that is to the center of that, the better balanced you're going to be. As that point travels away from that platform or that circle, you will become less balanced. So these are all important points. Now, why does any of that matter?
Because if you don't have balance, you're not going to be able to apply the maximal amount of force, maybe from the ground. If you're off balance.
Absolutely. One of the reasons why I think that's so critical is we understand that force is going to fall, that line of gravity is going to fall through the center of mass, and that center of mass has to be over your feet if you're standing and you're balanced. So that might not seem like a big deal, but if you're looking for reference points, okay, you are a new lifter, you're a coach, you're trying to figure out form. What's going on? I'm seeing a mess. This doesn't look quite right. How do you know what the pieces are, the most important pieces of the puzzle? How do you know where to start analyzing a lift? And having a physical reference point, having the bell in it as one piece of the puzzle and having your feet as the other, makes a really, really handy reference point. So you can put these pieces together and start making decisions and start trying to untangle something that seems to kind of be knotted up and not really working all that right. So these are really important points. That's why I think the line of gravity is important, that it moves through the center of mass, and center of mass is one component in balance, and the other component is your base of support. Therefore, your line of gravity has to be moving through your feet if you were doing a standing lift and you are balanced. Fair?
Fair, I accept.
Okay.
So that's going to keep us correct, and those are our points of reference. But what are some like examples of how I can see if this is the case? I mean, we talk about the press, and I can get this one, the press. If you're in your press rack position and you press up and your arm goes too far out, now that bell is obviously outside of being over your foot. If it's, most of the time, if you're at a 90-degree angle, right?
Sure.
So that's going to create torque on it and then make it harder. Is that what we're looking for? Is that all I need to know?
I think that's most of what you need to know. So the two, I think the most important things in this case are going to be the idea of torque and the idea of balance. So let's talk about balance, because balance is a simpler concept. Balance, again, is the ability to keep the center of mass over the base of support. If we're looking at a press that is significant, that's getting heavier, maybe moving, especially moving toward half body weight for some more advanced lifters, then you're looking at a portion of the mass that's going to be substantial. And that is really going to affect balance quite a bit. So if you move this bell away from the foot, you're going to have some significant balance demands. If you have balance problems, you're not going to be able to demonstrate force very well. The common analogy I use, if you want to challenge this, go find a nice frozen lake, stand on the ice and do some swings and let me know what happens. Really don't do that, because you probably hurt yourself. So the first thing is balance. If you can't balance, you can't produce force as well. The second thing Jeremiah mentioned is torque. And torque is it is the effectiveness of a force at causing rotation. Our joints require rotation, especially at the shoulder when we're pressing. As force moves down through the center of mass of the kettlebell, that's the thing you're trying to lift. That line of force is going to be relative to the shoulder joint, which is the main joint we're using when we're trying to lift the bell. The distance between those 2 points will register heavier or lighter. As the distance increases, that bell is going to feel a whole lot heavier. As it decreases, it's going to feel a whole lot lighter. The mass of the bell is not going to change, but when you look at the formula, the applied force multiplied by the moment arm, which is that distance I just mentioned. So in this case, between the center of the kettlebell and the shoulder, when that distance increases, the same mass is going to be a lot more effective. Now, I am happy just saying that distance in general influences the forces that you experience. I don't think we really need to get into the weeds. I think that is true. I think it's true. I know it's true for the press, for grind lifts, and I know it's true for ballistics as well. And we're going to use slightly different laws that I don't think are important. I think what's important for you to understand listening to this is that distance is a force multiplier, that when distance increases, it makes things feel, whether or not they in fact are or not, it makes them feel a lot heavy. And the real forces that your body has to deal with will get a lot heavier. So an example we've used in the past, and you can use really, really easily yourself, pick up something, anything with mass, ideally a dumbbell or a very small kettlebell, nothing too heavy, and hold it out in front of your arm, right in front of your shoulder, like a lantern. You will feel a certain sense of weight, a certain sense of heaviness. But as you move the kettlebell away from your shoulder and you increase that moment arm. So if you increase the distance, that's all we're looking for. We don't want to bog you down with physics and math and all that stuff. We're just looking for distance. As distance increases between the shoulder and the kettlebell, that kettlebell is going to register as heavier. And you can feel this now yourself. Interestingly, where do you keep your shoulders? Generally, you keep them over your feet, which is again why the foot is such a handy reference. So maybe they'll be a little bit inside, a little bit outside, but for the most part, that's where they're going to be. There's another example where distance will make a difference in how things feel, and that's with rotational motion. So if you've ever been on a merry-go-round, which you can find one in any playground, this is a cool thing that you may or may not have experienced. But when I was a kid, I always wanted to stand toward the outside. When you stand
faster,
it does. In fact, there is more speed. There has to be. If you're looking at imagine this top view of this merry-go-round. So you've got this big iron circle with a bunch of screaming children on it. You're looking down, and if you were to draw a point in the middle and you were to draw a point in the end, and then draw a line between them, and then another line that's going to mark when this merry-go-round takes a full revolution. That line, all points on that line are going to pass the marker at the exact same time. So let's say, Jeremiah, you're the marker. You're watching your son on the merry-go-round. He's having a blast. every time any kid in that line passes you, that's a revolution. But the kid that is in the middle doesn't have to cover as much distance as the kid that's on the outer edge. So in order for that to happen, those points can't be moving at the same rate. One has to be faster than the other, even though the whole thing is moving it in one piece. So it's just an interesting example. It doesn't really matter. What we go back to is the fact that distance matters. And when you have a kettlebell rotating, let's say, around your shoulder at a greater distance, there's going to be an increase in speed. Another example we've used is a baseball bat. You know, for the people who are self-defense savvy, if someone's swinging a baseball bat at you and you can't run away, get close to the handle, because the handle is not going to be moving as fast as the end. It's not going to hurt as much. So that's what the take home is, that whether we're looking at torque or we're looking at rotation and speed, the distance involved there, those things are going to be force multipliers, and those things are going to be impactful when it comes to your lifts and the forces that your body experiences.
Okay, so in the kettlebell swing, where now it's definitely coming away from your feet, how are we being affected by that in that particular case? If it's further away, now it's out arm's length. Let's say you got that nice straight arm, arm's length float. If you don't wait to get it integrated back to the body and you bend back too soon, that's what's going to create the additional torque on your back, and that's where it becomes a problem.
In that case, yes. In that case, what we're worried about is the distance between the kettlebell and your feet, because your feet are connected to the kettlebell via your spine. Yes, it has to go up your legs. The spine, goes up your spine. It goes down your arm. But the points that really matter in this case are going to be the kettlebell and your feet. So let's not worry about the distance as it relates to arm length, because arm length will matter in terms of how hard it is to actually propel the bell. That's where distance is going to matter. But if we're talking about safety and efficiency, we're talking about this idea that the bell is only heavy at a particular time. If you have used adequate leg drive, you've kept the bell close to your body, you're jamming your feet into the floor, and you've made that bell float, when it's up in the air and even moving back down towards you, you're not going to feel a ton of force. You're going to feel what's called centripetal force, the force of the bell being pulled back toward the middle, because your arm has to constrain it or it's going to fly away from you. But that bell's not going to really be heavy until you go to move it into the backswing. And the bell is going to be heaviest when the bell is between your feet. So if the bell is between your feet, then if it's heaviest rather when it's between your feet, then you want to think of a couple rules. One is make sure those arms are connected to your body, because the distance between the bell and your spine is going to be minimized. And also your joints are not going to be opposing gravity. Your joints are not going to be falling forward or back. They're going to be nicely lined up over your foot. And that's an interesting that you might want to think about. Have you ever thought about the idea of standing and walking, and how humans are better at that than other animals?
Yeah, is it because we have that like bone in the top of our neck or something, or that muscle or whatever, that keeps us from like googling our heads around? Is that what it is?
That is from what I've read. That is one of the things. But let's look at the idea of standing. You have to stand for a long time. And no doubt you're going to shift side to side. You're going to move around a little bit. But generally, you're not going to bend your knees. That's going to make it considerably harder. As we look at the human body and we look at how everything is stacked up, when everything is over the line of gravity, it's not opposing gravity as much. And as soon as our joints start to fold away from that line of gravity, then torque increases. Okay, we have more torque at particular joints, which means muscles are going to work harder to have to keep us standing up. So if we're moving let's say we're moving the knees forward and the hips back in order to squat, then those bones are now creating distance away from that line of gravity, that midline. And that is going to be, especially if the kettlebell is over that point, that's going to be the thing that is increasing torque, which means that the effort required, the work required to hold up the same kettlebell will increase relative to those individual joints. So when those joints are stacked up in a nice straight line, there is less torque on them. than there would be, because we have our line of force. Our line of force is our line of gravity. And the closer we can keep the bell to that thing, then the less torque there's going to be. And I know that that might sound a little complicated. It really isn't. You just want to think that
keep the bell close to your body when you squat.
Keep the bell close to your body, keep the bell close to your foot. So as you're moving down from a swing, if you want to control it when it's at its heaviest, one, you want your arms connected, because you want to oppose all that force with your whole body, not just with your arms. But if your arms haven't connected to your body, and let's say your hips break back too soon, then you're creating torque at the spine. Your bell is actually chasing your spine, and the distance needs to be covered by something, and it's going to be your spine. So you want to stay nice and stacked where torque can't really oppose you as much until the last possible moment. Then your hips are going to jam back, and you're going to be able to go into the backswing without incident, ideally.
Yeah, and the bell's on you, so that's going to be less strain. And then you apply that force again when the bell returns to basically over the foot, or the spot as we call it, which I'm sure we'll do an episode on. But it's then now you get the most force because the heaviest part is in line with the line of gravity. Is that what we're saying? Or is it because you're most balanced there?
You are most balanced there. The force application, which is largely going to be vertical, is through there. So if you think about a billiard shot, we've used this example before. If you hit that cue ball straight on as opposed to at an angle off to the side, you're going to get more force transfer. There's also some interesting anatomical stuff. And I have read some interesting physics and anatomy books that have talked about how anatomy is affected by physics. There's got to be a reason. Jeremiah just mentioned this idea of a muscle to stabilize the head on the neck. If we didn't have that when we walked, then it would be really, really difficult to stand above the ground. We would have to probably be quadruped. We'd have to stay closer. We'd have to support our heads and our necks with our shoulders. We'd have less range of motion. So we probably couldn't see as far, and we wouldn't be as good at standing. Anatomy seems to be at play here too, and that's the point at which when the bell is over the foot, that's the point at which your quads are going to be most active, and your glutes. Everyone likes to scream about the swing and glutes. Your glutes are active most active during the last third of the swing. And that's roughly when the bell is going to be over your feet. It's going to be mostly right at the end. Before then, yes, they're going to be doing something. Your hamstrings are going to be doing a lot more. But that last third, when the bell is over your foot, that's when your anatomy is most lined up in order to really put force directly into the bell.
All right. Yeah. And if you don't do that, then your butt's going to fall off. And that'll be clearly embarrassing. That's so embarrassing. All right. So if you move your joints away from the center of mass, or the line of gravity, am I saying that right? Same line. Okay. If you move your joints away and the kettlebell is also away from that, you're in trouble. But if your kettlebell is over your foot as best as can be, depending upon the lift, and you're moving those joints away, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah. You're going to be managing these forces as well as you possibly can. And I don't know that I should throw this in there, but I'm going to anyway. The center of mass is not going to be it's not a static point. It's going to move. So let's go back to this analogy of the swing. As the bell is moving away from you, as it's swinging forward, rising up to the float, one of the reasons why it's common to see a lean back through the ankles is balance. If you're standing up, stick straight, and that bell is surging forward, especially if it's a bigger bell, and you don't do anything to pull back, too much of your center of mass could move forward. Your center of mass is going to respond to the mass in the system and where it's moving. So if you have a large bell and it's moving forward and you don't do anything to move it back, then you're going to lose balance. So you do want to think about how you were oriented and how the bell is oriented. So the bell is the thing we're lifting, and it's going to be a significant part of our center of mass in most cases, many cases. And if it isn't, you probably don't really care about these rules anyway. So we want to keep that close to that line to manage balance.
Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning again, because you've said it a few times and we've said it before, this system, this human body and kettlebell connection, the system. Mm-hmm. And obviously I've been talking to you for years, so I'm like, oh, I get it. Yeah. As I press up, the center of mass is moving up and towards the bell because it's gaining distance from where it once was. Same as a swing, same as a snatch, right? So if we think in terms of moving our body with the legs pressing into the ground, keeping that bell in an efficient manner closest to the line of gravity or closest to over our foot, we're going to be all good.
Sure. Absolutely.
And you're guaranteeing that I'm going to hit a max press
Guaranteed.
and pass the snatch test.
Obviously. At the same time.
Duh. Yeah. I mean, I'll snatch with my left hand for 100 reps and hit that press right
No
at rep
problem.
50, though. You know what I mean? Because
no problem.
It's hard to keep it that 48 in the rack when I'm doing that hinge back.
You'll figure it out, buddy.
You know, I got to, because I don't want to tip over because my balance will be off because my base of support has been compromised. That's a lot of physics talk there, Roger.
An interesting thing, if you think about a big circle with a dot in it, that dot directly in the middle of that big circle is going to represent your center of mass being in the center and perfectly balanced. As any of the mass moves, let's say the circle were to change shape and it were to elongate in a particular direction, that dot in the middle would move toward the elongation. As more mass moved toward, let's say someone pulled it up and to the left, as that mass started to spread out upward and to the left, that dot would shift in that direction because there's a new center. Okay. It really is that simple. It is the center of all the mass. So as the mass is rearranging, that center needs to move. So as you're going up overhead into a press, especially with a big bell, that center is going to move along with the bell. And it's a pretty simple way to think about that. So anytime you move a body, one of the common reasons why you'll see an arm out to the side when people are overhead pressing is because this arm to the side, you're increasing, one, you have torque at the shoulder. Okay. So this mass of this arm actually becomes more effective at influencing the rest of the body. This is helping to pull, let's say I'm doing a left press overhead and that center of mass is going up into my left. Having my right arm out to the side will help me maintain my balance to a point. If not, I'm going to have to lean. Mm-hmm. This is something managing this is an interesting part of this. And if you do want to get into the weeds of this stuff, that's really what a lot of this is about. Keeping the bell over the foot is helping to keep the center of mass over that base of support easier. It's a good reference point because again, this is your point where balance happens. So keep the bell over that point and you'll be good to go.
And that's it. So keeping the bell over your foot simplifies your technique, especially if you combine it with the algorithm where you're getting these sequences of steps correct as far as what they're there for. And then it should essentially make everything better.
Well, you will keep, again, you'll keep strain down. And the idea of strength as a skill is something Strong First talks a lot about. You talk to any power lifter or Olympic lifter, there's a huge amount of skill in being able to apply force to an implement. We want to understand what is the right point. If I'm looking at a lift, whatever type of lift it is, I need to start with balance and I need to have some visual markers. There are a few things that I'm looking at, and this is going to be one of those things. This is going to be, again, this will carry over to a lot of different points. And it really is pretty simple. Simply put, when you think about, I mentioned this earlier, I'll mention it again. Something needs to connect the kettlebell to your feet. And that thing in many cases is your spine. A little bit different with the press because you've got to worry about the integrity of the shoulder and the neck, which is also part of your spine.
Yeah, it's all connected.
But when we're looking at things like squats and deadlifts, when we're moving the spine from vertical to a horizontal position, if we don't keep that bell over the foot, we're increasing the amount of torque that the spine needs to deal with. And that can be a really big deal. If you start to let that kettlebell creep over the front of your toes or even beyond your foot, you may not lose balance because you'll instinctively shoot your butt back. But again, there's a big, the spine is the thing that's covering that distance. And I don't think it's a good idea to put extra strain on it unless, you're intentionally trying to train it. But if that's not what you're trying to do, if you're trying to keep yourself safer and more efficient and move heavier loads, then there are specific ways to do that. And this is going to allow the force that you generate to be the most effective at moving the thing that you're trying to move, which is a kettlebell.
There you go. I think that pretty much sums it up. Anything else?
Um, I think that there one last thing to point out is you can't always keep the bell directly over the foot. You can keep it close.
Okay.
There are body dimensions you've got to worry about. There are going to be times when, if I, let's say I'm moving up into a press, I have to account for the length of my humerus. Now there are ways to do that rather than going straight up. I can spiral it, which is a helpful thing. But at some point, the length of my humerus is going to come into play. And being that my forearm is attached at the elbow, that length may carry it outside of my foot. So I'm going to have to do a good bit of leaning. I'm going to have to manage that balance. I'm going to have to manage my center of mass, and that is what it is. That you can't shorten your arms. You can try to keep the arms as tight as possible. That's where leaning comes in. Again, that's where spiraling comes in. But there's only so much you can do with a squat. If you're trying to, let's say you're doing a goblet squat and you want to keep your arms as close to your body as possible. Well, what happens if your torso wants to incline more and naturally bring you forward? This is common with long-legged lifters. What happens if you are a very thick person? You got, a thick torso, you got thick arms, and you can't get the bell directly over your foot when you're standing. That's going to be an indication that you're not going to be able to do that when you're squatting and deadlifting either. Deadlifting, it should be a little easier, but there are cases where you just can't get the arms as close as you want. So do realize that you are a solid piece, you are a solid object. And as long as you are as close to keeping the bell over your foot as possible, you're going to be good.
Yeah. Keep your meat sack in line. And yeah, I think when I think about that, one thing that jumps out to me to illustrate it directly is, and you can do this with a light kettlebell or you could do it with a sort of challenge. Like, all right, let's just say 24 kilo or 28 kilo for a strong guy like you, Roger. Not too bad. Nothing you can't just play around a little bit with and do the press, keeping it intentionally over the foot, check in the mirror, check the video, and hit that spiral, and then just pull it out there and then press up. And you're gonna struggle with a bell that normally is no issue with you over a certain amount of reps. Maybe it's 10 reps you got before you struggle, but that's just a different story. But it's a real easy test for you to do if you're trying to understand this concept. Just hold a bell in a rack, press it, feels good, nice and easy. Hold a bell out here. It's probably pretty hard to press. And don't say, we told you to do that if it hurts you, because it might.
Well, you may want to do that to challenge your shoulders, and that's totally fine. Just know that there is an increased strain and an increased risk, and it may be worth it. If you've got healthy shoulders, I don't see a problem with it. It's not about being dogmatic or prescriptive. Do this, don't do that. We're offering this to you as a simple point, and I know there's a lot of nonsense and gobbledygook, but when you really look at the idea that distance changes things, and you have just a simple marker to observe and a simple directive, keep the bell over the foot, I don't think you can get much simpler than that. We've just tried to give you a little more information as to why to make this case, rather than just saying, hey, do this. We could have made a 30-second video, and some of you may have appreciated that. But for those who want more, we went into some more detail.
Yeah, if you made it this far, you love more. Give them more, Roger. All right, cool. So keeping the kettlebell over your foot simplifies your technique, reduces the risk, improves performance, and makes your lifting more efficient. Hey.
Yes.
What more do you want? Print it. That's it. All right. Do you have anything else?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
All right. Promise. Well, okay, fair enough. All right. Be sure to download the Bells app. And of course, let us know what you want to know about. And if this is working for you, or if you have any questions about it, you can always post a video on your socials and tag us, and chances are we'll look at it, because we're people like that and we love helping you. So that's that. All right. Anything else? No?
Done.
Good. All
Bye,
right.
everybody.
Stay strong, everybody. Yeah, he's hungry. Eat up. Stay strong.